Monza is obviously one of the very, very special tracks in the championship, not just because it's in Italy, obviously, but because it's the fastest circuit of the season, which obviously requires quite a lot of compromises. It is a track where in 4 points around the track we go well over 300 kilometers an hour, but at the same time we got two very slow chicanes. We got 4 points where we turn at medium speed, and then we have the exit of Ascari, which is the last fast chicane, where it can be considered a high-speed track. So obviously the biggest compromise in Monza is in terms of aerodynamics, because you want to run low downforce to get as high speed as possible at the end of the straights, but then the slow chicanes, you would like to have a lot of grip there, so you would like to have high downforce. Obviously, given the efficiency of this track, the compromise goes always in the direction of very low downforce, to the point that Monza, together with Monaco, is normally one of those two tracks where you develop specific aerodynamic components for this specific track, which normally are used only here, almost always only here. Obviously Monaco being on the other side of the very high downforce. And other particularities of this track is that it's averagely bumpy, and also because of this sudden variation from high speed to low speed, the brakes are under considerable stress from a mechanical point of view, from energy point of view. On the positive side though, the long straights allow them to cool down, so normally the cooling and therefore the brake duct size doesn't need to be excessively big, because the brakes have time to cool down, but the mechanical stress they have to withstand is averagely too high, and we will see what it means later on. One little anecdote about the braking in Monza is that almost every driver in almost every category during the championship, when they get to Monza, they said, can we please have a look at the brakes, because the car doesn't feel like it's stopping normally. And this is very interesting, because although the drivers are very experienced and they have come to Monza already, the feeling of this lack of braking efficiency is always reported. Obviously the reasons are double. The first one is that the low downforce means that also the car has much less drag, so when they just lift the pedal, the throttle pedal, they don't get the normal deceleration that they expect from the car. Plus, again, the low downforce means less grip on the tires, and so that also affects the braking. Braking stability is one of the key issues to sort out in Monza normally. Although Monza is not the heaviest track for brakes, it still requires good braking performance, because we have very high speed sections followed by heavy braking and going some places under 100 kilometers an hour from well over 300 kilometers an hour. So let's go through shortly about what Formula 1 brakes are in terms of material. So this is a brake disc. Basically every wheel is fitted with one of those. Obviously it's like, let's say, like in every modern road car, but with a lot of differences. First of all, the material. In a road car, the discs are steel discs. This is carbon, which makes a very big difference, because these brakes give obviously much better performance than a normal car, but they give their performance only if they operate in a certain range of temperature, which, depending on the material or the manufacturer, but let's say we could average around 400 degrees. So if the driver doesn't bring the brakes into temperature, say you or me were driving the Formula 1 car, we wouldn't get any performance from the brakes. Basically, they would brake very, very badly. These small holes that you see here are vents. Basically, the air goes through, and then there are channels inside that need to cool the disc, because obviously you want to have them hot, but you don't want to have them too hot, because carbon over a certain temperature oxidizes, and this means that the thickness of the disc would reduce dramatically very quickly, and it could lead to a disc failure, which obviously is a major problem that everybody wants to avoid. Just to give you an idea, this is a new disc and has this thickness. This is a used disc after, well, looking at it, I would say it's after not a very heavy race, obviously, but if you see them side by side, you can probably detect the difference in thickness. Monza is a very low downforce circuit, but what does that actually mean? Downforce in Formula One is almost as important as in the aircraft industry, but for the opposite reason. Basically, downforce is the force which is generated by air when the air impacts a wing foil, or let's say a wing for ease of explanation. In an airplane, when the airplane is traveling, the air generates a force which lifts the wing and therefore keeps the airplane in the air. What we try to obtain is exactly the opposite, so to have a force which basically pushes the car on the track, because there is a relationship between the amount of force, vertical force you put on the tires and the amount of grip that you get from the tires, which means that the more down force, it's called downforce because it's a force pushing the car down, you can get from the car, the faster you can travel around the corners. Obviously, nothing comes for free, so in general, the more you increase the downforce, the more you increase another of the aerodynamic parameters of the car, which is the drag, which means how much you have to pay in terms of straight line speed, because obviously, to put it simply, an easy way to increase the downforce is to increase the angle of the wings. Obviously, increasing the angle of the wings means that the wing faces more the wind, and this means that obviously it will act as an aerodynamic brake, if you want. So every track needs a compromise between how much downforce you want to be fast in the corners and how less drag you want to have in order to be fast in the straight. In Monza, this compromise always goes in the direction of reducing the drag to be fast in the 4 points, which are well over 300 kilometers an hour. And this obviously requires a lot of skill from the drivers to be as fast as they can with the little downforce they have in the corners. So how do we get low downforce in the car, or conversely, how do we get higher downforce in the car? The main element which dictates the downforce level in terms of tuning is the rear wing. The rear wings, we have a couple here just to show the main differences. The one on the right is a standard wing. The one on the left is a low downforce wing. Obviously, the items that affect the downforce level of the wings are several, and they are all related to geometric parameters. It can be the inclination of the wing, can be the size of the flap. You see the flap here is very small. The flap on this one is bigger, and in general also the dimension of the wing, which can be seen, especially if you see from it laterally. See, you will immediately see the difference of the main plane. This is what we call the main plane, and this is what we call the rear wing flap, and this is what we call the lower beam or the lower element. Since we're here, we can also see this device, which was introduced already in 2011. It's called DRS, and basically it is a system which allows reduction in drag. Actually, DRS stands for drag reduction system. Basically, when the driver pushes the button, this much faster than how I do it, flips up, and then when the driver lifts the throttle or pushes the brakes, or if he pushes again the button, then it just falls down very quickly, and so you recover your, let's say, baseline downforce level. Yeah, the general environment in Monza, let's say that the tarmac is relatively bumpy, so the track is relatively bumpy. Weather, normally Monza always happens early September. It is still summer in Italy, so it can get very hot, but it is a period of the year where the weather might unsettle. When it rains, it happened a couple of times, it rains really heavy, but let's say you could get really almost every condition, although the dry is the most likely. Obviously, if it rains, it puts an extra, let's say, level of difficulty because of the low downforce. Normally when it's wet you want to have as much downforce as possible. Technical briefing, Monza.